For months after the sad killing of Lil Jeff, suspicion intensified surrounding the potential perpetrators of his murder. Ultimately, the police seemed to have a breakthrough in the case by capturing Trap City Rob and charging him with the crime. Nevertheless, the investigation did not conclude with Trap's arrest. Urban Area Rob's arrest, the subsequent events, may serve as the catalyst for one of the most violent gang conflicts in Chicago's history. Let us thoroughly examine the aftermath of Trap City. Rob's arrest and its implications for the Chicago gang landscape. Lil Jeff's murderer is shielded by the gang, and the circumstances surrounding Lil Jeff's assassination are as disturbing as they are sorrowful, set against the backdrop of Chicago's unyielding gang warfare. On what appeared to be an ordinary day, Lil Jeff became ensnared in the crossfire of a violent drill, a term denoting a premeditated gang assault orchestrated by rival gang affiliates. Video footage from that tragic day depicts the distressing minutes before Lil Jeff's murder and the purported assailant, Trap. Urban Area Rob was a prominent member of the opposing gang, and his participation in the altercation was not coincidental, given the escalating tensions between the factions. As gunfire erupted, chaos ensued. Lil Jeff pursued a rival, gaining the offensive advantage, but his opponent fled into a residence. Rather than retreating, Lil Jeff followed him inside, where he was subsequently shot by another individual emerging from the house, reportedly identified as Trap City Rob, in the aftermath of Lil Jeff's assassination. The apprehension of Trap City Rob, sometimes referred to as Robert Coleman, seemed to be a progression toward Justice Coleman, a notorious figure within the rival gang, was apprehended shortly after the incident, his name already synonymous with violence and intimidation. The community hoped that this arrest would bring some semblance of closure and accountability. However, the legal proceedings that followed were fraught with complications, notwithstanding the seriousness of the charges against Coleman. The case swiftly collapsed owing to a lack of strong proof. The camera footage, although showing the mayhem of the drill, failed to firmly establish Coleman at the site, as the shooter witnesses, sometimes terrified by the possible penalties of testifying against gang members, were unwilling to come forward, significantly weakening the prosecution's case. While the investigation delayed, the decision was taken to release Coleman. The publication emphasized the persistent problem of gang protection, where members shield one another from legal penalties, hampering the pursuit of justice. The release of Trap City Rob, despite the severe charges against him, sheds a light on the extensive network of protection that exists inside gang culture in Chicago. As in many other cities afflicted by gang violence, commitment and dedication to one's group often outweigh everything else. Gang members are known to protect each other fiercely, employing a range of tactics to evade law enforcement and shield their own from prosecution. This protection can manifest in various forms, from intimidating potential witnesses to providing alibis and even tampering with evidence. The fear of retaliation is a powerful deterrent for those who might otherwise come forward with information, creating an environment where silence is often the safest option. The terrible murder of Lil Jeff is a reminder of the greater problem of gang violence that has long afflicted Chicago. The city, with its rich cultural tapestry and dynamic music scene, is also a battleground where young lives are regularly cut short by the relentless cycle of gang warfare. The local rap culture, a great medium for expression and storytelling, has been severely damaged, with numerous artists falling prey to the violence that pervades their neighborhoods. Chicago's rap industry has generated some of the most prominent voices in hip-hop, musicians that utilize their music to portray the harsh reality of their area, although this realism sometimes comes at a costly price. The tales of King Vav, FBG Duck, and Lil Jojo, all excellent rappers that died untimely deaths due to gang violence, echo the sad narrative of Lil Jeff. Let's rehash some of their stories. Young Devin Coin Bennett, also known as King Von, was up surrounded by violence, poverty, and suffering. Von's life was profoundly affected when his father was killed when he was only 11 years old. This tragic incident would later impact his music and worldview. Despite the chances against him, King Von found solace in hip-hop, particularly in the drill music genre that was taking Chicago by storm. After serving time in jail, Vav was released in December 2017 and began to pursue music seriously. He signed with Lil Durk's record label Only the Family and released his debut single Beat That Body in June 2018. However, it was his breakthrough single Crazy Story that dropped in December 2018 which truly put King Von on the map. The song's vivid narrative and V's distinctive Combination of comedy and tenderness connected with audiences, peaking at number 81 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Throughout the following 2 years, King Vav released a succession of popular tracks like Grandson Fall 129, Leavon James 2020, and Welcome to OBL 2020. His songs frequently highlighted his hard reality, from growing up in poverty to his experiences with violence and imprisonment. Unfortunately, King Von's life was cut short on November 6, 2020, when he was shot and died in Atlanta, Georgia. At the age of 26, he was once again another young victim of gang violence, much as FBG Duck. Carlton Weekly, also known as FBG Duck, grew up surrounded by crime, poverty, and misery. Despite the odds against him, Duck found peace in hip-hop, especially in the drill music genre that was sweeping Chicago by storm. With his raw, gritty lyrics and unusual delivery, FBG Duck quickly gained recognition in the Chicago drill scene. His music was a reflection of his experiences growing up in the city's toughest neighborhoods, where street life and violence were an ever-present reality. As Duck's popularity grew, so did his influence. He became a prominent figure in the Flyboy Gang FBG faction, a group of young rappers and musicians who were making waves in the Chicago music scene. Tragedy came on August 4, 2020, when FBG Duck was shot and died in Chicago's Gold Coast area. He was only 26 years old. FBG Duck's murder was part of a broader wave of violence that swept through Chicago in 2020, with many young rappers and musicians falling victim to gun violence. Just like Lil Jojo, Lil Jojo's music was a reflection of his experiences growing up in Englewood. His songs were raw, gritty, and unapologetic, painting a vivid picture of life in one of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods. His distinctive delivery and charismatic flow quickly gained him a following in the Chicago drill scene. As Lil Jojo's popularity grew, so did his influence. He became a leader among his peers, and his music inspired a generation of young rappers. But with fame came danger. Lil Jojo got caught up in a long-standing conflict between his crew, the Brick Squad, and a rival gang. Things took an awful turn on September 4, 2012, when Lil Jojo was shot and died in his own neighborhood. He was only 18 years old. In the years after his death, Lil Jojo's music has acquired a new level of fame, with several of his tracks being played millions of times on sites like YouTube and Spotify. His influence can be heard in the music of many young artists who followed in his footsteps, and his legacy continues to be celebrated by fans of Chicago drill and hip-hop. Each of these artists carried the potential to transcend their circumstances, yet their lives were abruptly ended by the very forces they sought to escape through music. The impact of gang violence on the rap community goes beyond the death of individual artists. It generates an environment of anxiety and tension where the borders between creative competition and real-life conflict are frequently blurred. Lil Jeff's tragic murder has raised a can of worms concerning his history and the dark underbelly of Chicago gang life. Why was Lil Jeff killed in Trap C's hood? Trap City's territory, or hood, is a notorious area in Chicago known for its relentless gang activity and history of violence. This neighborhood has long been a battleground for rival gangs, each vying for control and dominance over the lucrative drug trade in territory. This territory is marked by a legacy of bloodshed, where gunfire is a common sound and danger lurks around every corner. In the weeks leading up to the fateful drill in Trap City's hood, the air was thick with tension. The neighborhood was a powder keg ready to explode, with rival gangs on high alert and the community caught in the crossfire. The escalating violence and mounting pressure were obvious as rumors of impending conflict spread like wildfire through the streets. Lil Jeff, in the heart of the storm, was fully aware of the threats against him. His recent acts had heightened the hatred between his group and their rivals, creating an environment of fear and expectation. The neighborhood was rife with whispers of revenge, and the air of anxiety was difficult to ignore. As the day of the drill neared, the streets were silent, as if holding their breath in anticipation of the violence to come. Lil Jeff, undeterred by the danger, prepared for the confrontation with the same confidence and bravado that had defined his rise within the gang hierarchy. He knew that his presence at the drill would be seen as a challenge, a direct provocation to his enemies. As the drill commenced, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Gang members, armed and ready, took their positions, eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of trouble. The drill was meant to be a show of strength, but it quickly spiraled into chaos as gunfire erupted, shattering the fragile silence. The bloody Shootout that led to the death of Lil Jeff was one incident in a long list of violent events in the young man's life. Lil Jeff's began with petty crimes such as theft and vandalism, which were seen as rites of passage within the gang. These early experiences not only hardened him, but also taught him the unwritten rules of the street. As he gained notoriety within the gang, Lil Jeff's role evolved, and he became known for his fearlessness and willingness to take on risky tasks. This reputation quickly spread, earning him respect among his peers and making him a target for rival gang. Despite the dangers that came with his lifestyle, Lil Jeff found solace in music. He began writing lyrics that reflected his experiences and the harsh realities of his environment. Music became an outlet for him, a way to express his frustrations and aspirations. It was during this time that he adopted the moniker Lil Jeff, a name that would soon become synonymous with both his musical talent and his criminal exploits. As Lil Jeff navigated the treacherous waters of gang life, his reputation for fearlessness and cunning continued to grow. By his late teens, he had ascended the ranks within his gang, becoming a key player in their operations. This rise in the hierarchy was marked by a series of increasingly bold and dangerous criminal activities that solidified his status as a formidable figure on the streets. These ventures not only brought him financial gain, but also increased his influence within the gang. His ability to strategize and execute complex operations earned him the trust of his superiors and the loyalty of his peers. During this period, Lil Jeff's criminal activities took on a more violent nature. Allegations surfaced that he was involved in several violent confrontations with rival gangs. These confrontations often resulted in casualties, and while concrete evidence was scarce, the whispers of his involvement spread like wildfire through the community. As he honed his craft, Lil Jeff began performing at local venues where his unique style and authentic storytelling quickly caught the attention of audiences. His music was a reflection of his life on the streets, filled with vivid imagery and a gritty realism that set him apart from other artists. This authenticity became his trademark, drawing in listeners who were captivated by his ability to convey the complexities of his world through his lyrics. As Lil Jeff's fame began to climb, so did the scrutiny from law enforcement. His former associations and the recognition that came with his music caught the attention of authorities who were keen to comprehend his illegal activities. This increased focus led to a series of legal hurdles that would test Lil Jeff's willpower and harm his developing career. One of the primary issues Lil Jeff faced was the ongoing investigations into his alleged involvement in gang activities. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, law enforcement agencies were determined to connect him to various incidents, using his lyrics and public persona as a basis for their inquiries. This vigilance sometimes led in many interactions with the police, ranging from interrogation to more formal judicial procedures. The burden from these legal difficulties was increased by the media's depiction of Lil Jeff as a problematic figure. Headlines sometimes sensationalized his background, presenting him as a symbol of the confluence between music and criminality. This story not only damaged his frequent occurrences. One of the most worrying trends is the engagement of younger folks in gang activity. Reports indicate that teenagers and even children are being recruited into gangs, lured by promises of protection money and a sense of belonging. This trend not only perpetuates the cycle of violence, but also poses a significant challenge for law enforcement and community organizations working to curb gang influence. The spread of guns has made the situation rapidly. Chicago's gangs have access to a regular supply of illegal weapons, adding to the city's high rates of gun violence. The combination of highly armed gangs and densely populated metropolitan areas makes a lethal mix, with innocent people frequently caught in the crossfire. The effect of gang violence on Chicago's communities is significant and far-reaching, touching every area of everyday life. Small businesses, typically considered as the lifeblood of neighborhoods, are among the worst impacted. The persistent prospect of violence deters consumers and investment, resulting to economic stagnation and decline. Company owners suffer extortion and intimidation from gangs, prompting some to shut their doors permanently. This economic crisis further increases unemployment and poverty, creating a vicious cycle that drives gang recruitment. Schools, designed to be secure havens for learning and development, are not immune to the impacts of gang violence. Kids in gang-afflicted regions frequently suffer daily threats and Intimidation both inside and outside the classroom. The presence of gangs in schools disrupts the educational environment, leading to increased absenteeism and dropout rates. Instructors and staff too get caught in the crossfire, striving to maintain order and deliver a decent education. Despite the turmoil, families suffer the brunt of the emotional and psychological toll of gang violence. The death of a loved one to gang-related violence leaves a lifelong scar, with sorrow and trauma rippling across whole towns. Parents live in continual worry for their children's safety, while young people face great pressure to join gangs as a means of survival. The disintegration of family structures and support networks further isolates people, making it impossible to escape the cycle of violence. The social fabric of communities is likewise stretched as trust and cohesiveness collapse under the weight of dread and suspicion. Neighbors grow distrustful of one another, and neighborhood activities and gatherings decline, leaving inhabitants feeling lonely and insecure. The constant sensation of insecurity stifles community development and involvement, limiting attempts to achieve good change. Despite these hurdles, many communities are resilient, teaming together to battle the impacts of gang violence. Grassroots groups and local leaders work diligently to give assistance and resources, building a feeling of optimism and empowerment. At the forefront of Chicago's gang landscape are the Gangster Disciples, formed in the late 1960s by Larry Hoover. The GDs are recognized for their rigid organization, which replicates a corporate hierarchy. This degree of structure has enabled them to retain a significant presence on Chicago's South Side, participating in numerous criminal activities like drug trafficking and extortion. Their participation in territorial fights with competing gangs has led to the city's high levels of violence. They are followed closely by the Black Disciples. The Black Disciples, BDS, formed in 1958 by David Barksdale, are another prominent force in Chicago's gang landscape. With a history characterized by brutality, the BDS have been engaged in various high-profile crime, including the tragic murder of 11-year-old Robert Yummy Sandifer. This occurrence, which stunned the country, revealed the brutal realities of gang life in Chicago. The BDS continued to exert significant influence, particularly in the city's South Side neighborhoods. The Latin Kings, a Hispanic street GY with roots dating back to the 1950s, have established a formidable presence in Chicago, known for their involvement in drug trafficking, violent crime, and extortion. The Latin Kings are one of the largest and most powerful Hispanic gangs in the United States. Their structured hierarchy and code of conduct outlined in their King Manifesto demonstrate a level of organization that has contributed to their enduring influence. The Black Peace Stones, BPS, another significant player in Chicago's gang landscape, have a history marked by violence and drug trafficking. With an estimated 100,000 members, the BPS are one of the largest gangs in Chicago, exerting influence across various neighborhoods. Their involvement in violent crimes has contributed to the city's challenging crime statistics. Distinct from the street gangs mentioned above, the Chicago Outfit, also known simply as the Outfit, represents a different facet of organized crime in Chicago, with roots tracing back to the early 20th century. The Outfit has been involved in a wide range of criminal activities, including extortion, loan sharking, and murder. Unlike the street gangs, the group works more quietly, with fewer obvious turf fights, but equally considerable influence in the city's underworld. Thanks for watching. Look out the cards on the screen.